to me isn't being loyal to the bricks and the mortar and the grass around here. It's being loyal to the people who run this club.
The mist drapes over Turf Moor like memory. Empty rows, no chants, no cheers, just the quiet trace of a man who never needed noise. Jimmy McIlroy. He didn't play to entertain, he played to elevate. Teammates, moments, the game itself. No flash, no slogans, no shortcuts, only timing, vision, truth. They called him the brain, but it was his heart that moved everything. He slowed the chaos. He found spaces that didn't exist. He passed not just with accuracy, but with purpose. He didn't lift trophies with noise, he lifted clubs with silence. If you still believe in the kind of football that made legends, subscribe. For the memory of men like McIlroy, who gave everything and asked for nothing. Because this game forgets fast, but we don't. James McIlroy was born on 25th of October 1931 in Lambeg, a small town in County Antrim, Northern Ireland. Not a stadium in sight, just coal smoke, cracked windows and working boots. But in that town, football wasn't escape. It was language. His father, Harry McIlroy, had played for Lisburn Distillery. His uncle Willie played for Portadown. Football ran through the blood. But Jimmy didn't run like the rest. He didn't play with fire, he played with calm. And calm is dangerous when the world's in a hurry. By the time he stepped onto the pitch for Glentoran in 1949, he wasn't just promising, he was different. 18 matches, 8 goals. Not bad for a boy who didn't shout. He played like he was already thinking 2 passes ahead. Slipping into space before defenders knew it was there. No brute force, no panic, just rhythm. In March 1950, Burnley came calling. £7,000 changed hands. No fuss, no banners. A teenager from Lambeg crossed the sea, not knowing he'd never leave Burnley again, not in soul, not in legacy. And when he walked into Turf Moor for the first time, there were no speeches, no welcome parade, just a man in worn boots and a brain about to rewrite how a club would think. He didn't arrive as a star. No headlines, no promises, no noise, just a teenager with calm eyes and a mind sharper than most managers. At first, Turf Moor watched in silence, then it started to listen. Because the boy from Lambeg didn't run the game, he read it. They called him the brain. Not as flattery, as fact. He saw angles that hadn't opened yet. He passed before strikers even made their move. And when chaos closed in, he slowed it down with one touch and perfect timing. He didn't bark orders, but suddenly, everyone around him played better. That's what he did. He made 11 men look like a team. And week by week, Burnley stopped asking where the magic came from, because they already knew. It wore number 10 and it never raised its voice. He wore green like it mattered, because it did. 55 caps, 10 goals, not for power, not for records, but for pride and for home. For Northern Ireland, he was more than a player. Then came Sweden, 1958. The World Cup. No one expected them to survive. But with McIlroy pulling strings in silence, they went further than anyone thought possible. He didn't need to be loud, he just needed a pitch and a purpose, and his country followed him. Even on the world's biggest stage, he didn't change, didn't inflate, didn't sell the moment. He played the same way he always did, for the badge on his chest and the people back home who never stopped watching. They weren't supposed to win it, not Burnley, not the small town club. But football doesn't run on permission, it runs on belief. And one man who saw the game like no one else. By 1959, McIlroy wasn't just Burnley's brain. He was its spine, its rhythm, its quiet center. That season, he carried a torn groin. Most would have sat. Jimmy played through it, not for glory, but because he knew the team needed him whole, even if he wasn't. And they rose. Match after match, he fed the forwards with surgical precision. He controlled tempo like a conductor in boots. He turned pressure into poise, noise into silence. And when Burnley lifted the First Division title in 1960, it wasn't loud. It was earned. Not Liverpool, not Arsenal, not Manchester United, Burnley. And at the center of it, a man who didn't scream for attention. He just delivered what the Giants couldn't. With pain in his legs and fire in his soul. He didn't ask for more money. He didn't threaten to leave. He gave Burnley 13 years of loyalty and asked for nothing in return. And in 1963, they sold him. Not with a handshake, not even with a conversation. Jimmy McIlroy found out he'd been transferred by reading the newspaper. £25,000. That's what it cost to tear the brain out of a football club. Chairman Bob Lord made the call. Fans didn't forgive him, many still haven't. Some walked away from Turf Moor that week and never came back. Because this wasn't just a player being sold, it was trust being broken. It was loyalty being spat out. He had carried them to glory with torn muscle and silent genius. And when the time came, they tossed him out the back door. Jimmy didn't argue, he didn't fight. He packed his bag and left, with the same dignity he'd always shown. But something changed. Not just in him, in Burnley too. The town lost its compass. The club lost its soul. And football proved, once again, that loyalty has no place in business. He never wanted to wear another shirt, but he did because that's what the game demanded. Not loyalty, not legacy, just the next transaction. At Stoke City, he found a familiar face. Stanley Matthews, a legend nearing the end. Two minds, two artists, in a game that was growing louder by the year. Jimmy still played like the game mattered. Not the crowd, not the checkbook, just the game. 98 appearances, 16 goals. He didn't fade, he adapted. Then came Oldham Athletic, where the boots grew heavier, but the vision never dimmed. And when the legs slowed, he moved to the bench. As a manager. First Oldham, then Bolton. But this wasn't his arena. At Bolton, he lasted just 18 days. They told him to sell players. He told them no. Because Jimmy McIlroy would never trade people like pawns. Not even when he was in charge. Not even when the game had already moved on. He walked away with dignity intact. Again. And just like that, he left football the same way he entered it. Quietly, completely, unshaken. He could have gone to Italy, could have taken the money in South America. Even River Plate sent word, but he chose Burnley again. No contract tied him there, only memory. He walked the same streets, sat in the same stands, watched the club that once sold him as if nothing had changed, because inside him, nothing had. No bitterness, no speeches. Just quiet pride and the kind of grace that doesn't fade. When his wife Barbara passed in 2002, he didn't disappear. He stood strong for his family, his son Paul, his daughter Anne, his granddaughters Catherine, Tara, and Bethany. He lived simply, watched the game, and gave interviews only when asked, never to be seen, only to be understood. He once said, "Maybe I was a big fish in a small pond, but it was my pond." He didn't need a statue. He already had something rarer, a town that whispered his name long after the stadium went quiet. He never asked for a tribute, but they came anyway, slowly, quietly, just like he lived. In 2008, Burnley gave him freedom of the borough. In 2011, the Queen honored him with an MBE, not for fame, but for football and service. And at Turf Moor, they put his name on the stand. Not out of marketing, out of memory. Because when you walked into that ground, you weren't just entering a stadium, you were walking into his shadow. But there was one wound that no tribute could close. The transfer, the betrayal, sold without warning. Read about it in the papers. After carrying the club through pain, they threw him out like he was temporary. And even decades later, those closest to him said, he never truly forgave them. Because loyalty like his doesn't forget. He passed on 20 August 2018, aged 86. No press circus, no ceremony. Just a club remembering the man who once played like silence made sense. Burnley called him our greatest ever player. No scandal, no controversy, no ego, just grace. And today, when a ball is played into space with perfect weight and impossible vision, it's still him. Because some players die, and some become the rhythm this game still can't explain. If you're still here, watching, remembering, subscribe. Because the game forgot Jimmy McIlroy, but we never will.